Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to dive into the ultimate ancient free market, and we're going to extract some high-yield strategic insights from the original megacorporations. We're looking at the writings of Herodotus. He was an observer from the 4th century BC who traveled the ancient world and documented the rise and fall of the very first global superpowers. Now, you might be wondering, what can a 4th century BC historian actually teach today's busy executives about strategy, agility, and the bottom line? Well, let's dive into that because Herodotus didn't just write history, he documented the ultimate executive case studies in leadership, risk, and asymmetrical warfare. You see, he wasn't a warrior, and he wasn't a king. He was an observer who recorded the harsh, real-world realities of empire building, mergers, and market dominance. So here's our strategic roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. The father of strategy, 2. The confirmation bias trap, 3. Disruptive innovation in sieges, 4. Failed cultural integration, 5. Fighting asymmetrical competition, and finally, 6. Leveraging terrain against scale. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the father of strategy, transforming 4th century BC observation into actionable corporate insights. Herodotus was this incredibly curious Greek who traveled all over the ancient world. But what truly set him apart from literally everyone else was that he constantly asked why. When other people just accepted that the Greeks and non-Greeks were constantly at war, Herodotus sought out the root cause. He realized that to understand the bottom-line results of these massive geopolitical maneuvers, you have to look past the surface-level symptoms and find the original friction. For example, the Persians traced their conflict with the Greeks all the way back to the Phoenicians kidnapping a king's daughter. That sparked generations of retaliatory actions, eventually culminating in the Trojan War. Herodotus saw that these weren't just random acts of violence, they were a chain of cause and effect. He essentially built a strategic framework showing how early missteps compound over time into massive conflicts. Moving right along to Section 2, the confirmation bias trap, the fall of Croesus, king of the Lydian Empire. Let's look at a major executive pitfall, perfectly illustrated by Croesus. He was the richest man in the known world, basically the ultimate successful CEO of antiquity. At the peak of his reign, he controlled the magnificent capital of Sardis. But, facing the rise of a massive new market competitor, Cyrus the Great of Persia, Croesus needed to know if he should strike first. So, he sought foresight from the Oracle of Delphi. And guess what? He heard exactly what his massive ego wanted to hear. The oracle told him, if Croesus goes to war, he will destroy a great empire. This is such a brilliant illustration of the danger of acting on ambiguous data that just happens to confirm your own preconceived bias. Croesus naturally assumed the empire he would destroy was Cyrus's. He didn't even bother to analyze the alternative scenario. So he attacked. And the bottom line results? Cyrus defeated him on the plain of Sardis, captured him, and Croesus effectively destroyed his own great Lydian empire.
What's wild is that prior to his ruin, Croesus had actually ignored the Athenian wise man Solon. Solon basically acted as a wise board member, warning him that current massive wealth absolutely does not guarantee future success. Solon told him, you can never call a man truly happy or successful until he's dead, because fortune can change in an instant. Croesus only realized the truth of this strategic advice when he was tied to a funeral pyre literally about to be burned alive by Cyrus. It definitively proves that past performance is never a guarantee of future returns.
Okay, Section 3, Disruptive Innovation in Sieges. Cyrus the Great bypassing the impenetrable walls of Babylon. So how did Cyrus the Great build the world's largest superpower? Through what we would call today disruptive tactical innovation. When Cyrus set his sights on the magnificent city of Babylon, he faced what seemed like an impossible market barrier. I mean, the city sat on a vast square with a 60-mile circumference. It was protected by deep moats, formidable inner and outer walls, and totally impenetrable brass gates. The Babylonians were prepped for a traditional protracted siege. They had stocked up years of food and literally mocked Cyrus from the top of their walls. But Cyrus completely flipped the script. He looked at the Euphrates River, which ran right under the city walls, and executed a brilliant three-step maneuver. His men dug a vast channel outside the city, redirected the river into a marshy lake to drastically lower the water level, and then simply marched his Persian troops straight down the dry riverbed. They completely bypassed those impenetrable brass gates. The crucial point here for us is that when faced with an impenetrable market barrier, the best leaders invent an entirely new point of entry. The Babylonians were caught completely off guard. The bottom line result was that the element of surprise allowed the Persians to capture Babylon without a prolonged, resource-draining traditional siege. Cyrus completely redefined the rules of the engagement.
Next up,
is Section 4, Failed Cultural Integration, Cambyses II and the Disastrous Post-Merger Mismanagement of Egypt.
Now we're going to examine a massive failure in post-merger integration. Egypt had a highly distinct, deeply religious culture that was almost the complete opposite of Persian customs. Instead of respecting the local corporate culture, Cyrus's son, Cambyses, led with extreme hubris and toxicity, resulting in absolute disaster. After conquering Egypt, he didn't even try to win over the populace. When he saw them celebrating a festival, he assumed they were mocking a recent military failure of his. In retaliation, he mocked and stabbed their sacred Apis bull, a literal calf they worshipped as a god. You could call that the ultimate career-limiting HR violation. He then whipped and burned the mummified corpse of a former pharaoh, an act that deeply violated both Egyptian and Persian religious customs. And to top it off, he pushed an army into Ethiopia without any logistical planning, leading to a disastrous retreat where his starving men actually resorted to cannibalism.
Seriously, never underestimate the strategic cost of ignoring the local culture of the entities you acquire. The bottom line result here was swift and brutal. This cultural ignorance and blatant disrespect led to an incredibly toxic environment. It sparked intense hatred from the acquired Egyptian population, prompted national revolts, and ultimately triggered Cambyses' own paranoid descent into fatal madness, where he began murdering his own family members and staff. Just a total collapse. All right, Section 5. Fighting asymmetrical competition. Darius's resource-draining campaign against the Scythians. Let's look at another super common executive blunder, wasting massive resources trying to fight an asymmetrical competitor on their own terms. Following Cambyses, King Darius took control of the Persian megacorporation and decided to expand his market share by invading Scythia. He marched his massive, expensive army across the Danube Bridge with an overwhelming force, only to be dragged into a frustrating, unending wild goose chase. The Scythians didn't meet him in a traditional battle. No way. They united their tribes and employed evasive guerrilla warfare, constantly staying just out of reach, luring the Persians deeper into barren territory and completely exhausting the Persian supply lines. You see, the Scythians possessed no fixed assets. They were a nomadic people. They had no cities to sack, no buildings to destroy, and absolutely no farmlands to conquer. When Darius angrily demanded they stand and fight, the Scythian king basically replied that they had nothing to lose, so why on earth would they? The bottom line result here is that the giant Persian corporation had to retreat completely empty-handed, because you cannot conventionally defeat an agile competitor that holds no fixed liabilities. Traditional military scale was entirely useless against a competitor playing a completely different game. Which brings us to Section 6, Leveraging Terrain Against Scale. How agile Greek forces dismantled the massive Persian megacorporation. So this is the ultimate clash. The massive Persian war machine versus the vastly outnumbered, fragmented Greek city-states. When the Persians finally turned their sights on Greece, it looked like a guaranteed hostile takeover. But the Greeks understood exactly how to leverage their unique environmental assets. 6,400. That is the staggering number of Persians killed at the Battle of Marathon, compared to only 192 Greeks. It proves the incredible ROI of choosing the right flat terrain for disciplined hoplite infantry. The Athenian general Miltiades, who was actually well-versed in Persian tactics, chose a specific terrain that perfectly favored the heavy, overlapping shield formations of the Greek troops. That completely neutralized the lightly armored Persian archers and cavalry. And this mastery of terrain scaled into an even larger victory on the water. Later, at Salamis, the Athenian leader Themistocles engineered an incredible asymmetric victory by weaponizing the geography of a narrow strait against the oversized Persian fleet. Operating like a brilliant turnaround strategist, he made the brutal executive decision to completely evacuate Athens, removing his biggest liability. He kept the fragmented Greek alliance together, and then he feigned a retreat. This lured the massive, highly unmaneuverable Persian ships right into the narrow waters of the Salamis Straits, where they became totally disorganized. Then he unleashed the smaller, far more agile Greek triremes to literally cut them to pieces. By leveraging their unique terrain and unmatched agility, the Greeks achieved the ultimate strategic objective and defeated the world's largest superpower. The bottom line result? The agile Greeks completely neutralized the Persian scale, destroying the enemy navy and securing their ultimate independence. They forced the massive Persian Empire to abandon its campaign, proving for all time that structural agility and a brilliant understanding of the battlefield can consistently defeat overwhelming scale. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought about your own strategic agility in today's marketplace.
Are you relying purely on massive scale and outdated assumptions, kind of like Croesus and the Persian kings? Or are you operating like the Greeks, agile, deeply aware of your environment, and ready to turn an opponent's size into their absolute greatest weakness? Keep asking why, stay out of the executive echo chamber, and always keep innovating your point of entry. Thanks for joining me.